Hello everyone and welcome back to the Sports with Frank podcast, another Friday episode today. You know what's coming. Today's prediction day, so of course the Fire Triple is returning in a little bit. But before that we're going to be focusing on what happened during the week with the big game we talked about on Monday, Barcelona Atletico Madrid game, and of course yesterday with the Manchester City Liverpool game that didn't mean much for the Premier League race because Liverpool already were crowded champions during the weekend, but it was a good display from Man City. I'm going to talk about that game as well. So a lot to focus on as usual on Fridays. Let's dive right into it. This is the Sports with Frank podcast. I'm Francesco. Let's do this. First episode of July today. Time really goes fast. We started this podcast in May? It's already the first week of July. We're going into the second month of this everyday football season, and it's getting more and more interesting by the day. There's some very, very fun matches coming up this weekend. We'll talk about them later, but first, I think it's time that we talk about this Barcelona Atletico Madrid game. I talked about it in the preview on Monday, but today we react to what happened. And to be honest, I kind of said that this game was going to be the way it was. I've heard a lot of people after listening to the podcast, they came to me and said, "Are you sure about Barcelona? You were pretty harsh. You said that they're pretty done as a club and they need to rebuild and not doing the right way." And to be honest, I do not think that my reaction was out of proportion at all. I think this is a team that's getting too old, that's not aiming for the future. They're trying to win now, and to do so, they are jeopardizing their future. And this is just not the way you should behave in football. Now, football, it's very different compared to other sports, right? If you look at the NBA or even American football, the age thing it doesn't play much of a role for the majority of these teams. So the teams that win, more often than not, they really focus on winning now and they don't look at possible future outcomes. In the NBA, there are a lot of teams that they try to win, and if it doesn't work out, they blow it up, as the people in the sport say, and they go again. In football, it's not really the case. For teams like, for example, Real Madrid, they lose Cristiano Ronaldo. They didn't blow anything up. They kept, going, and they kept being competitive. That they brought in Hazard to replace Ronaldo really a year later, but they didn't give up on competing at all. Barcelona are trying to do the same, but I don't think they're doing it right, because Real Madrid, if you look at them, they had a squad that was pretty young overall, and they had a lot of young talent in the making. Asensio, we'll see if he turns out to be the player that he was advertised when he first started being featured in Real Madrid squads. They have, of course, Varane, very young and futurable centre back. They brought in Mendy. They had Reguilón, is now at Seville, but still a Real Madrid player. Casemiro is still young, is not even 30 yet. And if you look at those players, they are players that are younger, but they're also ready to win right now. So they are the perfect balance, and that's because Real Madrid, over the years, they invested a lot in young players. Barcelona had the big fortune to have this incredible generation of talented players coming from their youth academy all at the same time. The Xavis, the Iniesta, Puyol, Messi, and then, of course, they brought in Eto'o when he wasn't really the player that he ended up being before, Barcelona first and then Inter. They had Pedro, that is not a superstar, but he's a player that was very effective in that scheme, and again came out from that youth system. So they had those 10 years really between 2004 and 2014, where they kept bringing up a lot of players that really did make an impact. For many of those that were brought up and were good, there were a lot that failed to excel like they expected. A clear example is Bojan Krkić, a guy that was supposed to be the next Messi, but that phrase is really thrown around very often in the world of football. But in that case, people really believed that he could have been the next big thing for Barcelona. It did not work out, and since then he's been going places left and right. He had spent in Italy and didn't work out, and he's always on the move as a player, and definitely not the kind of guy that everybody expected him to become. Then there is more, but they try to bring in Nafalai, another guy that in his case injuries played a big part, but they were lucky enough to have a guy like Leo Messi and a lot of incredible players around him. But since the retirement of Xavi and Iniesta, which just for a timeline reasons, those were the players that were featured in that team that have won the last Champions League for Barcelona in 2015. After that, this team has struggled big time in Europe. In Spain, they're still winning because, again, the team is very strong. But it comes a time for every club there. If you haven't invested properly and you haven't got young players coming up, then you're gonna get to a point where you can't win anymore, and that's gonna create a situation that's exactly what's happening at Barcelona. Because Barcelona are so used to winning now, so used to be such an important club. They're probably the richest club in the world if you look at the amount of money they make every year. Probably neck and neck with Real Madrid up there. So it's a team that really they don't want to go through a phase of rebuilding. But if you haven't planned by in time, when the time comes for you to start rebuilding, you're gonna be left behind. And that's exactly why I think Barcelona are in this situation right now. They really put their money all over the place for players that, yes, could have been incredible and could have been key members of that squad. But that's not how you do business nowadays. You can't go and get a guy like Dembele after a good year at Borussia Dortmund because you think he's going to be the next big thing and paying that much money for him. The reason why sport directors are so good, those that are because they're able with a short amount of money to make great deals. If you give the money to someone that doesn't really know how to do his job, and this is not a dig to Abidal, but really Abidal is a guy that he's in the position that he is because he's the club legend and everything you want to put. It's a great player. We all know what he went through with his illness. So I'm glad that he has a job and that he can perform what he likes to do as a manager for transfers and stuff like that at Barcelona. But you need to put someone else next to him that's really capable of helping. And also you need a board that's very strong, which is something that Barcelona don't have, which results in them spending money all over the place for players like Dembele, which maybe he can turn it around, but what we've seen, especially physically, that's not a player that a team like Barcelona can really focus their future on. Then they go out and get Dembele, a guy that's, in my opinion, one of the best young midfielders in the world, but you cannot bring in a player like that and then put him out of position. He is a regista, he is a playmaker, and I understand that Busquets is the guy. But if you make that amount, if you make that sort of move, then you gotta make him work. Like you have to have him play the right position so he can perform the best he can. Some other examples: Griezmann. Before coming to Barcelona, he was one of the best strikers in the world. Won Europa Leagues with Atletico Madrid. Won a World Cup. Then he goes to Barca, and he has to be played out of position because Barcelona already have Luis Suarez up top. Luis Suarez, at his peak, one of my favorite players. Now he's not good anymore. He's an okay player. He can play for sure still at an average level, but for a team like Barcelona, for what they want to do, this is not the right player. In my opinion, they should play Griezmann as a striker, go with Messi on that right side, and to be honest, I would risk it with Ansu Fati on the left side because he is the best player that Barcelona has in terms of youngsters. Probably after De Jong, but Fati is even younger than De Jong. The thing here is that if you want to win consistently, you can't just expect that to happen overnight. You have to build up when you're still strong to then be productive later on. This is exactly what I talked about at the beginning of this podcast, really, probably one of the first episodes, so go check that out if you haven't. When I talked about Bayern Munich, the reason why they're so good, consistent, even in Europe, with a budget that's much smaller than Barcelona, and the amount of money they throw around is definitely much smaller than what Barcelona do. they're so successful because they can program basically 5-6 seasons ahead, because their board is so strong. Rummenigge has done an incredible job over there, and really, this is a team that they know that they have to, add piece by piece, year after year, when they're winning, to be able to then keep winning in the future. We talked about Hernandez, a big purchase, but he comes in, he has time to adapt. He's not, he's not a starter there. He's probably not going to be next year either. Still has time. Alphonso Davies, first year, he was sitting on the bench. Then this year, he has exploded as an incredible player. And then you can go on and on and on. Gnabry, they bought him, then they sent him on loan again at Offenheim to let him develop. So it's just every year there's always a nice purchase by this team, one or more, that just shows you how to plan properly and how to program a season and seasons ahead. Barcelona are not doing that. This is a team that's going to lose Messi real soon. Some reports in Spain are saying that he's going to leave Barcelona next year. I don't believe that. I think he's going to finish his career there. They're probably going to give him a lot of money to stay, and he's going to accept. Suarez, as I said, 33. I think for as far as top level football goes, I think he's done. Busquets, he was an incredible player at his peak, but he's also getting older, and for the kind of game that he plays, with that, at the center of that midfield, but with a lot of, defensive tasks. And then Piqué is probably going to be done in a few years' time as well. Alba, another guy that's very close to the end of his career. So this is a team that's going to lose key players in key spots and don't have anyone to replace them with. The backup left back at Barcelona is Junior Firpo. Good player, nothing to say about him, but not Alba player. That's not the level that Barcelona need him to be. In the centre back position, yes, they have Leclerc. I like him. He still can develop. He's pretty young still. And Umtiti, a guy that's always injured. You can't just go with that as your two centre backs once Piqué goes. They're in the middle. Yes, they have De Jong, but what happens once De Jong moves there in the centre mid position in front of the defense? Who's gonna play beside him? They bought Pjanic, good purchase for now, but selling Artur, a guy that's 23 years of age, that really should be the future of your club, it doesn't make any sense. And when I watched these games, especially the one against Atletico Madrid, I knew it was going to be like that. A lot of basically a whole game of defense for Atletico Madrid trying to stop Messi, and Barcelona couldn't do basically anything else. They scored 2 goals, a non-goal by Diego Costa, and then a penalty that, in my opinion, was absurd. I would have never given that penalty in my life. And then Messi scored from that penalty kick. But if there weren't those two situations, Barcelona couldn't find a way to score. Yes, Atletico Madrid had 2 penalties, but the game Atletico was trying to play wasn't to be offensive. They went in there knowing that they weren't favored for this game, so they went there with the mentality of, okay, let's defend the whole game, and then if we have a way forward, we're gonna take it, but we're not gonna force it. And they played perfectly, in my opinion, for what they should be playing against a team that plays the way Barcelona do. Stopping Messi was enough for Atletico Madrid to basically reduce at the minimum the risk to suffer a loss. And he almost paid out. Again, that penalty that Messi ended up scoring, in my opinion, was not a penalty at all, ever. And if you take that away, this Barcelona team could not create chances. Griezmann, a guy you paid that much, is on the bench basically the whole game. I just don't understand what's going on there. Quique Setién seems to be on the way out. Apparently want to bring Xavi in. We talked about what I think about this kind of operations before. But if you keep throwing stuff at the wall, waiting until one of them sticks, that's never going to be the winning formula. And Barcelona are in chaos right now. And once Messi leaves, which I think is going to be within 2 or 3 years, this club is in no position to be competitive. Financially, they are in a black hole. They still think that they can go out and buy whoever they like, and it's turning out for them to not be the case anymore. They wanted Lautaro. Inter said, okay, we'll give it to him. We'll give you, the player, but you have to pay the risk close, 111 million euros. And Barcelona said, now we'll give you Vidal, Rakitic, and £10. And of course, Inter said no, and rightly so. So this just proves that this team is too confident in what they have, and they can't get out of that mentality, which is going to hurt them so much. And this game is just emblematic of the state of Barcelona right now, with players that are not they can't compete anymore for high stakes, trophies like La Liga. And I want to see what happens with the Champions League returns, because I do believe that Napoli could actually make it through. They have to score, and that's a fact. But honestly, this is a team that, to me, seems like they have no hunger at all to go and win. I don't understand what happened there and how it went downhill so quickly. They won Champions League 5 years ago, and since then, no move they made any sense to me in terms of what they got for players, in terms of players, but especially what they managed to do with these players. A guy like De Jong, after the season he had last year, he comes to Barcelona and he's probably one of the worst signings of the season in terms of what he gave to the team. Still an incredible player to me, and I would love him to be in my club. But the reality here is you can't buy players just for the sake of buying players and then expect them to play in different positions, different roles. Griezmann and De Jong are the main examples from this season, but Coutinho is another example. You buy a guy that's comes out of a great season in the Premier League, comes to Barcelona, he's a complete failure. He's been sent to Bayern Munich on loan. He's probably not going to even stay there. He's going to return. They're going to have to pay an immense salary. Dembele, a guy that's always always getting treated for some sort of injury, and it's not cutting for me. I always like Barcelona, but I think they're getting too cocky, and just they're not going to get out of this position where they're at now if they don't change everything from top to bottom in that board, and with the coaches as well. You can't just fire coaches left and right. You have to stick to one and go from there. If it works, good, but if it doesn't, let it be, because it didn't, not just because there was no time given to the coach. That said, I just wanted to have this rant about Barcelona because I'm honestly upset at the way this club has been handling the business. And again, go watch this game if you want to see what I mean. Players that are just walking around, no passion, no hunger. Real Madrid are now 4 points clear, and at this point, with 5 games left, that's a big gap for a team like Real Madrid that very unlikely are going to lose games, because they've been very good, and they're going to keep this from, in my opinion, for at least another couple of weeks. They're going to take home this title. I don't see any way Barcelona makes it back. And if they don't mentally find themselves again, they're going to have issues in the Champions League as well. Well, that was a fun little rant. Now let's move to another league, another country, another couple of teams. This time I want to talk about Liverpool because we haven't talked about them winning the league yet. This has happened last weekend. This is a team that over the years, since Klopp came in 2015, has been improving. They had a few seasons at the beginning where they struggled to make it to the Champions League. They did eventually manage to get to a final, as we know. Won last year in their second consecutive final. And then this year they bring in the Premier League after an incredible season, and a season that can't even get better. They're still in the race for 100 points. So incredible job by Jurgen Klopp all around. And I think this is a clear example of how a team that really had years, especially after that, the 2006-2007 season when they went to the Champions League final. Then they managed to stay relevant for a few years, but since then they really couldn't capture that form that they had with Rafa Benitez. And they were pretty dark years. Then they had that great season under Brendan Rodgers, where they almost won the Premier League. If Gerrard doesn't slip, it's very likely that they bring home the title. But it was a very up and down situation. So what do? In 2015, they bring in Jurgen Klopp, a guy that for years was considered a loser because he ended up losing the Champions League to Bayern Munich. But in my opinion, that was never the case. This is a guy that with a team, great team for Borussia Dortmund, but still not Bayern Munich, he managed to win the Bundesliga twice. So already a great accomplishment in my opinion, and I think whoever criticized this guy before should really ask themselves whether they watch football or they probably should watch some other sports, because Jurgen Klopp is a beast. He's a guy that really makes you want to watch every game that your team plays and makes you enjoy those games, even if you lose. And that's, I think, critical. As a Juventus supporters, for us, the motto was always, win no matter what. And that's fair. And this year with Sarri, we're seeing how, trying to change the way we win, it's hard. But when you get to a point like Jurgen Klopp has gotten with Liverpool, where you win and you enjoy, where you and your players enjoy playing football, and that's the best you can ask for. There are a lot of teams that play incredible football but never win. There are a lot of teams that play horrible football and win all the time. But then there are some exceptions, and this Liverpool team is the exception. It gives me no pleasure to congratulate them or to make them look good, because I never liked Liverpool. I live in Liverpool. Still, I can't find myself to like this team ever. I've always rooted against them. Every final they played, I rooted against them. Even in the Europa League final that they played with Jurgen Klopp in his first season against Seville, they were winning and they balled it completely and ended up losing to Seville. But I never liked him. But it's undeniable what has been done here and the importance of giving time to a manager. Jurgen Klopp comes in 2015, as I said, plays the Europa League finals and loses it in 2016. The same season, he comes 8th in the Premier League. So the next season, they have no European competition at all. No Europa League, no Champions League. That season, they managed to get to a fourth spot, eventually, risking not to qualify again. The season after, first season of Jurgen Klopp in the Champions League, they make it to the final against Real Madrid. The year after, last year, they win the Champions League. They come so close to win the Premier League, and if it wasn't for an incredible Manchester City team that had an absurd season, they would have won the Premier League already last year. This season, they come back stronger, and they win the title they've been waiting for so long, since 1990. So, what happened in many other teams, if a manager comes in October 2015, so basically the beginning of the season, more or less, 2 months in the season, he gets to the Europa League final, loses it, and then it comes 8th in the league. The year after, he's struggling. He's not close to get to the fourth spot, let's say in December. This happened at Arsenal with Unai Emery. This team made it to the final last year in the Europa League, and they almost qualified for the Champions League. This season, Unai Emery was sacked to bring in a really young manager that we'll see if he's good or not in Mikel Arteta. So that's just an example. In the same league, no patience whatsoever. A team is going to be successful if you give a coach time and the players that he needs to make his game the best he can. And Jurgen Klopp, year after year, season after season, showed improvement, showed that he had something in mind, and he was just trying to get there. They lose that Champions League final against Real Madrid because Loris Karius is probably, he puts up probably the worst performance by a goalkeeper in a Champions League final ever. If they had Alisson in that season, I'm not sure they lose that one, and probably they win 2 in a row. Situations in football are critical. Players make mistakes, but it's always the coach that pays for these mistakes. Jurgen Klopp was never taken as the guilty party in why Liverpool weren't succeeding. They believed in him. They gave him the player. They even sold him. They sold him Coutinho, the guy that was probably the best player in that team by the time he left, to bring in a guy, Mohamed Salah, who was very good in Italy, but not close to the idea that the supporters had of Coutinho. When he came in, there was a lot of protests going around and fans being upset that they replaced Coutinho with a guy like Mo Salah. Van Dijk, they overspent so much. He wanted Van Dijk. He was the coach. He was like, I want this guy in my defense. They bring him in, pay whatever they had to pay, and he's now considered the best defender in the world. So for all the teams out there that are struggling with new coaches and they're thinking about changing, they have to understand that if you make a decision on a coach, you need to give him time to show you what he can do. You can't expect a coach to come in and be good right away, because those are few exceptions that really rarely come about. And also, to get to the point where Liverpool are right now, winning by entertaining people. To do so, you need to have a system in place, a plan in place, and you have to trust the person you put in charge. That's simple as that. Pep Guardiola has won for years in the Premier League by entertaining people, yes. Has he had success in Europe? No. Why? Because different coach, different mentality. Jurgen Klopp is a guy that, he has the players, he wants 3 or 4 players for his team. He gets them and then he makes the rest of the team overperform. This team has a guy like Wijnaldum. He was picked up from a relegated team in Newcastle. James Milner, great career for him, but he's an old aging player that can't give much to many other teams anymore. But for Liverpool, he's one of the best every time he plays. And it could continue over and over and over. Over the time at Liverpool, Klopp made guys like Lovren look good. He's the kind of coach that every team should aspire to have. And I think there are many Jurgen Klopps around that don't get a chance. And I hope that going forward, we see teams believing in a coach and not giving up after 6 months or after a year, because that's not how you build a team. Just go for the guy that you want, and you see we're gonna have more and more Jurgen Klopps around the leagues. That said, yesterday's game was a good game for Man City, dominating performance. But to be honest, this is the Liverpool team that probably ended up celebrating until Monday morning. So I'm not surprised at the result. I actually thought that Man City were gonna win easily. I know Liverpool had the record, the points record in their minds, but I don't think they came to this game prepared at all physically. But I'm not saying from a stamina point of view. I just think that they went pretty hard on the celebrations. As I said, 30 years without a title in Liverpool. They know what this means to the supporters. They cannot celebrate with them, but I'm pretty sure they did celebrate on their own, and fair enough. So I'm not surprised by the result from yesterday, and I don't think it tells anything about the difference between those two teams. I think Man City is a great team, and we'll see what happens with them if they get actually banned from the Champions League. We'll see if they manage to keep the players. I think it's unlikely. I think a lot of them will leave. I think the main ones, Aguero, De Bruyne, and even Bernardo Silva and Mahrez, I think they will stay. By young guys like Gabriel Jesus, and I think even Laporte is a risk of leaving. And I wouldn't be surprised if Barcelona are actually the team that takes on Laporte, because I think they will look for a defender. And I think with no Champions League, it's going to be hard for City to keep him. But going forward, this is a team that's primed to be good, even once Guardiola leaves, because mentality is everything. And a coach like Guardiola leaves a lot in their teams, in the teams he goes and then leaves. Look at Barcelona; they've been playing the same style since he left. The tiki-taka, he is the one who introduced it, and since then he's been the main strategy for that team. Bayern Munich, very similar as well. So I think City will be fine once he leaves, but next year is probably gonna be a chance for them to win the Premier League again before Guardiola calls the day. But with this Liverpool, I don't know if it's gonna be possible. I think this is a team that's gonna win for many years to come. They're gonna keep this coach. They're gonna add players. News of today that Thiago Alcantara is probably gonna be a Liverpool player very soon. We'll see if that happens. It will be a great addition to that team, because in the midfield, that's probably the part of the pitch where they have to improve. I think putting Alcantara in instead of Wijnaldum will boost this team incredibly. So I'm looking forward to that. Again, I don't like being the one who praises this team, but when someone is as good as they have been, you can just overlook it. So congratulations to Liverpool, not just for the title, but for the incredible team that they managed to put together, and for believing in a coach, even though he struggled at first. Just giving him full attention and full commitment. Well done to them, and congratulations on the Premier League title. It's now time to predict some games, so let's get into the first game of the Fire Triple of this week. So the first game, we go to my favorite team, Juventus. Juventus have been pretty good. We talked about them after the semi-final and the final from the Coppa Italia that was played about 2 weeks ago. I did not enjoy watching that team. I did not like what they were doing. It looked a lot like they were tired. They weren't physically ready to compete. especially in the second game against Napoli. But since then, they've been extremely good. Given the competition wasn't the highest level, they played Bologna in the first game back, then Lecce, and then Genoa. Genoa and Lecce are two teams that are fighting not to be relegated. Bologna is a bit of a better team, is in the higher part of the table. They're around the Europa League contention. I don't think they're going to get there, but they're a pretty solid team. In these 3 games, Juventus scored 9 goals and only suffered 1. And they just look solid. But not only from a physical point of view, as in like they improved. In my opinion, they're getting better game by game, which was expected. But also, I think they're getting better in terms of chemistry from the players on the pitch. And that's what you like to see as a supporter, especially for a team like Juve that aims to win the Champions League. Getting better game by game is reassuring, because August is not far away. We're only 3 weeks away from the end of the month already, and it's easy to see that if this is going to be the trend going forward, you are going to get to the Champions League game against Lyon pretty prepared against a team that's going to be very likely they won't play any games before then. So that's going to be, we'll see what happens there. If what Lyon approaches are, what they try to do to prevent Juve from scoring. But right now, there's another game for Juve right around the corner, because they play tomorrow, so only 3 days after. And tomorrow is going to be a derby against Turin. Now, I've just talked about how impressive they've been and how improved they've been over the past few games. And Torino is the complete opposite. Torino have been very bad. They played their first game and they managed to draw against Parma. That was the game they have in hand. But then, a very fortunate win against Udinese, because Udinese dominated that game and Torino managed to come out with 3 points, but not deserved. And then they lost against Cagliari, a crazy game. They were down 3-0 and then they scored 2 in like 5 minutes, but then Cagliari put it away. And then they lost against Lazio, a game that they were winning. But in the second half, it was like they didn't even come back to the pitch. So coming to this game, it would be an easy prediction, right? Juventus have been on a tear. They score a lot of goals. They don't suffer unless it's an incredible, athletic gesture by a striker like it was against Genoa. And Torino has been, they've been bad. They can't seem to put it together. Defensively, they're a mess. So it would be an easy prediction for a Juve win, right? But if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you know what I think about derbies. I think everything you know about two teams has to be thrown in the trash when you talk about a derby. There is nothing more important for a team like Torino, for a team like Everton we talked about before, Betis, Real Betis, back in the days when we predicted that derby. There is nothing more important than pride. And in the city, for a team like that, if you win the derby, especially the last one of the season, you're going to brag about it until the next game, right? So they prepare the whole season to come to play these games and give everything they can to take home a result. Furthermore, Torino is a team that are struggling a lot, and they're gonna risk to be relegated if yes, they have a lot of teams behind them. Genoa, they're a pretty good team, but for some reason they can't put it together. Lecce, they've been trying, but they haven't been really succeeding in putting up this kind of football that they want to, and they're down there at 25 points. Torino still has 6 points over them, but it's easy, especially playing so many games in such a short amount of time. It's easy to start losing and then lose again, because you don't have time to kind of fight it back. Can be the opposite, of course, but it's more likely that a team just gets into a spiral that will take them farther down week after week, and eventually you find yourself in the relegation zone. So Torino comes to this game with nothing to lose in terms of, if they lose against Juventus, then they lose against Juventus. They are expected to lose. They can come in, free heads, play for the supporters to give them something over the course of the season to be happy about beating Juventus, and then try to get some points to keep Lecce away. Juventus are going to play like they've been playing these first 3 games. They're going to have a lot of possession. They're going to try to use their stars to start a spark in the game and maybe get a goal like a Dybala wonder, like he's been scoring since the Serie has returned. But I think a team like Torino, they're going to be super physical. That's usually what happens. In any Torino derbies, they usually beat the hell out of Juventus players. So that's going to happen tomorrow as well. And I think in this particular time of the season, with this such a packed schedule, it's going to be a risk for Juventus. So I think we're going to see some players maybe taking it a bit easier, try to maybe pull out the leg. So I think with their grinta, their hunger for pride, Torino can actually be more dangerous than people believe them to be. So I think it's going to be a very well balanced game. I might be wrong. Juve may be winning 4-0, but I think eventually it's going to be harder, much harder than what the table shows and what the latest results show. And I think Juventus will come out with a win, but I would be surprised if it's more than a 2-0 victory. And in my opinion, Torino will make at least a goal. So I think it could be a Juve win, and I think it's going to be a goal difference between the two teams. But it's going to be, I can see a lot of yellow and red cards being given away this game. Game number 2, we go back to Germany. We haven't talked about a German game in a while, because this weekend we have the final for the German Cup between Bayern Munich and Bayer Leverkusen. Now, Bayern Munich, as we know, is considered one of the favorites for the Champions League, although that train has been slowing down since the end of the Bundesliga, because, of course, at the point where people were talking about Bayern Munich, the only league that was available for us to watch was the Bundesliga. And of course, it's classic recency bias. People will say that if you win another 2 games, they'll start talking about Juventus. If Manchester City dominate a couple of games, they're going to talk about them. I'm surprised nobody's talking about Real Madrid. So it's always like that. But I think this Bayern team is legit. I think they're going to have a big chance to win the Champions League. I don't know if they're going to be the favorites once the Champions League returns, but definitely one of the teams to consider in the top 3 candidates to win it. So they have a chance to do the treble again. Last time they did the treble, of course, was 2013. That was the last time they won the Champions League in the first place, where they beat Borussia Dortmund. That was the Ribéry and the Robben team. And this time around, I think the team is pretty good, and I think it's probably better than that 2013 team that they had. Some young talent in there. We talked about Alphonso Davies a lot in this podcast. Serge Gnabry getting better by every game. Coman, I'm kind of happy for the guy because he had so many injuries in his career, and I'm happy that he's starting to find some playing time with consistency. And then they have Robert Lewandowski. I don't know. I don't think I can explain how much of a fan I am of this guy. I think he's the best striker in the world, hands down. And there is not even a competition at this moment. He's just so good and just so clinical. Like his ability in front of goal is just incredible. So with a kind of player like that, you can dream. And the next step in the treble race is going to be this cup against Leverkusen. Leverkusen is a team that, of course, lost out on the Champions League by throwing away points. Since returning, they honestly lost some games that I was shocked that they managed to lose, because I really saw something in this team. That loss against Wolfsburg was just insane. I did not see that coming a mile away. And like that, there were more and more games that they just threw away. And the game against Bayern was another example. That was a Bayern team that really came into play for sure, but they knew they were going to win the league already. They didn't have that extra hunger anymore. It was very, I'm not going to say an easy game for Leverkusen, but when I talked about that game, when it happened, I said how I think Leverkusen are going to have more than a chance. And they went ahead. They had the first goal with Lucas Alario. After 10 minutes, there was a miscommunication that Bayern defense. Alario got in behind, scored a goal. Leverkusen were doing well. They were actually keeping possession. They were attacking. And then Coman ties the game. And from that moment onwards, Leverkusen just stopped playing. They just gave up completely. That was a team that didn't even have Kai Havertz, their best player. He wasn't on the pitch. He wasn't even on the bench. He was just, not called up for the game at all because he had an injury. Still don't know what it was, but nonetheless, he didn't play. So that was a team that, you win 1-0 against this Bayern team. You have to have a boost in confidence. You can't expect them to just give you away the game. And of course, if they score, you can't just, give up all at once after 30 minutes of playing. So I think this Bayern Leverkusen team has what it takes to, be a threat to Bayern Munich, especially with Havertz playing. But they have mentally to be stronger than what they were in that game. Bayern went on and scored 4 more because before Leverkusen actually managed to get another one, basically at the end of the game. So this final is going to be interesting to watch because I think with Havertz, this is a different Leverkusen team. He's just so much of a threat up top. They can change completely the way this team approaches a game. But I really think that Bayern are primed to make push for another treble. They will win this game. They will take home the second cup of the season, at least doing a double for this current season. A season that didn't start well, with Fritz being called up to be the manager after sacking Kovac. Nobody thought that Bayern could come back and be as good as they've been. And I think this is going to be the coronation of the perfect season in Germany. And then they're going to move forward and think about the Champions League, having a month to prepare for the return leg against Chelsea. Should be easy business. And then fly to Portugal to play in that final 8. So a lot of stuff on the plate for Bayern Munich. But I think the first thing they'll get done is to win this cup against Bayer Leverkusen. But I just want to put an asterisk there. If Havertz is on his best day, I don't think it's going to be an easy task for Bayern Munich. Now, for the last game of this week, Fire Treble, we're going back to Italy. There's another game that's going to be a weird one, but definitely critical for the title race. So Lazio are hosting AC Milan. I talk about AC Milan a lot lately, and I said how I think their pride is going to be the main drive for this team from now until the end of the season. This past game day, 2 days ago, they drew against Spal after being down 2-0 for the majority of the game. And that was a weird game though. Milan really dominated the game. They had so many shots on goal and they couldn't seem to score. Spal had an absurd goal by Floccari that really just kicked the ball randomly and it ended up being a perfect strike. So a very unlucky game for an AC Milan team that's honestly getting better. In my opinion, it's not as bad as people make them sound to be. Because if you look into this team, they really don't have quality players, from the midfield onwards. Ibra is probably their best offensive player, and he's 38 years of age. So, for what they have, I think they're doing even too much. But nonetheless, I'm convinced this is going to be a dangerous team from now until the end of the season. And I think this game against Lazio, a Lazio team that's going to have no strikers in their teams because both Ciro Immobile and Caicedo are going to be disqualified for this game. So I think it's going to be Luis Alberto and Milinkovic-Savic probably playing strikers. Weird strikers, but nonetheless being forward in their formation. And probably Lazio are going to use Parolo and Cataldi there in that Mezzala role. We'll see if they manage to, have Lucas Leiva. Has had an incredible season so far back in the lineup. But it's going to be a weird one for Lazio because when you don't have your best player in terms of goals scored in Immobile, it's always already a big problem. But then if you don't even have the other striker on your team, the only other striker on your team is Felipe Caicedo, it's going to be weird, and it's going to be interesting to see if Inzaghi is actually, a good enough coach to face this adversity and be able to come out with some points. But I don't think it's a given that Lazio are going to beat Milan at all. I actually think Milan are going to win this game. They beat Roma a week ago. They can do the double in the, beating both the, Italian capital teams. And I think Milan are going to surprise a lot of people. They play Juventus next week. And so they have Lazio first and Juventus next. They can really decide this Scudetto race. I think if Lazio lose and Juve win, the game between Juventus and Lazio is going to be meaningless in a sense. But Milan can really decide what's going on. And I think they're going to win against Lazio. And I think they're going to be a problem for Juventus as well. But we'll talk about that game more on Monday. For this week's Fire Triple prediction, Milan beats Lazio in Rome. And there it is, another episode comes to an end. Another week is gone, another incredible weekend ahead of us. And, a lot to talk about. It really can't even fit in the podcast. I'm trying to keep this as short as possible. So, if whoever is listening, if you believe that the length, if you think that I should make them longer, then just let me know. You can find me on all social media platforms. You can find me on Twitter at @sportswithfrank. You can find me on Instagram at @sports_with_Frank. Then I'm also on Telegram. You can find the link to that pinned at the top of my Twitter page, together with all the other links, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. And speaking of Apple Podcasts, if you're listening over there, make sure to leave a review and 5-star ratings. That would be much appreciated. It helps a lot to raise the level of the podcast so that other people can see. And if you're listening on Spotify, don't forget to follow there to get updates whenever an episode goes live. That being said, I'll see you again on Monday, where we're going to review the games I just predicted, and we're going to talk more about a big transfer that happened over the week, and that's Leroy Sané to Bayern Munich. So we'll go in depth for that in this next episode on Monday. I kind of talked about it before when I did my transfer news episode at the beginning of this podcast, so in May. You can go check that out if you want, but we'll go into more detail on Sané to Bayern, how it fits, if I think it's a good deal, and more. Until then, this was the Sports with Frank podcast. I've been Francesco. Stay safe, and I'll talk to you soon.